think I got this right this time. So this one, when the clock goes up, yes. Unless they put it, oh, there we go, right there. So when that hits 4:59, I will go. Okay, when talking about greatest to never win a belt, would you put Gus in the conversation? People mentioned Faber, Cowboy, Yoel, who are all still active for now and could presumably win one, while Gus is retired for now. Yeah, I mean, you have to put him in the conversation, right? Because you could make an argument. I don't think John Jones lost the first Gustafsson fight, but certainly some people do. Some people recognize it was at a bare minimum quite close. He pushed Daniel Cormier to the brink. Like, he gave poor Gustafsson, man, he just came along at a time when there were two of the best fighters ever to live in his division, and he pushed both of them to the brink. Even for other fighters who never won a belt, you look at them in championship fights, and often they get smoked. Now, he got smoked in the rematch, I suppose, and of course Johnson beat him as well, but nevertheless, those two fights, the Cormier fight and the first John Jones fight, they're important. They're really important. I would absolutely make sure he's either at the top of the list or pretty close. Next. Explain the stoppage of the Joshua fight. Not doubting it, I just don't know boxing enough. Couple of things. Number one, I mentioned this before. A lot of times what they'll do is they'll tell you the referee will like pull down on their arms on the front to make sure there's like resistance on their arms. They're not like wobbly. If they get that, they'll tell them to walk towards them, and we have to walk a space. And if you're like wobbly, they'll stop it after you've been knocked down a few times. A lot of it is just a judgment call. And I think the issue was the referee asked Joshua, "Are you ready?" And he said yes, but he kind of had his arms up. Look at the previous stoppages. He puts his gloves up like this and the other ones. I guess the referee was like, "You've been knocked down 4 times. I don't like the body language. I'm calling it a day. You can say yes all you want." So it's a judgment call about their readiness and the amount of damage they've already taken. Next. By the way, I have no issue with the stoppage. What do you think about the so-called dad body and its benefits, as now two of the very best fighters in combat sports walk around with some extra meat? I think if it's right for their body type, that's fine. But like, would you recommend that Joshua do it? Right? If you're chiseled out of stone, gaining weight, is that good for you? The question is, and by the way, like Ruiz might not necessarily be at his best right now, even though he's winning. The point being is not to have some kind of infatuation with BMI or body fat percentage. The question is to say, at what weight are you still, you're most effective, or at least very effective, without some kind of, trade-off in training yourself to death. Not everyone's got bodybuilder genetics. People think, oh, if I just lifted all the weights in the world and took all the steroids, I too could be Mr. Olympia, until you realize that there are people who have incredibly aesthetic genetics already doing all that stuff too, in which case, no, you cannot be. So the point is just to not infatuate around body type and body shape, but there's also a question of what weight are you optimally quick, optimally cardiovascularly prepared, optimally strong, and that may or may not include somebody who's got extra weight. If you're thin and you're a lean gainer, it won't really apply to you. Next. Who is on your dad bod Legends of Combat Sports Mount Rushmore? Fedor, Paul Buentello, DC, Andy Ruiz, Butterbean for different reasons. I guess Roy Nelson as well. But these are these dad bods? Like dad bod is like skinny fat, right? I don't know. I guess I'll go with those 4 next. Just in the interest of getting to more of these. So yeah, Ngannou. Yeah, I'm sure he's got a dad bod. Does UFC 241 do more pay-per-view buys off the strength of the star power of Nate Diaz and the co-main of alone than 239 with Jones, Holm, Askren, and everyone else on that main card? Impossible to know in this new era of ESPN Plus paywalls and everything else. It wouldn't surprise me if that was true, but God only knows, man. God only knows. That's a hard one to answer. Because also, Pettis is great, but it's not like Nate's fighting Connor, which to me would of course be the case. Or Nate's fighting, I don't know, somebody who's got a bit of a name other than himself. And Pettis does, but not to the same degree. Next. Time we have remaining here. Does last night's Joshua loss show why the MMA promotion model is superior for fans rather than boxing? 3 heavyweight boxers couldn't get out of their own way to make the fight that fans wanted to see. Might be bad for MMA fighters, but the UFC makes the fights we want to see happen. Right. Well, here's a couple of things. The UFC model is typically designed so that they are in alignment with the consumer more regularly. That's the idea. The difference is that it may or may not be in that fighter's interest, and so there becomes a bit of a trade-off there. You would want something kind of in between, right? You would want some kind of mechanism that would compel them to go, which is what, in theory, let me continue on this one a little bit. In theory, that's what something of the sanctioning bodies are supposed to provide. Some kind of either mandatory challenger, some kind of timeline, some kind of stature that people are chasing after that forces these positions on them. It just doesn't really work that way. I don't know what that mechanism would be. But yes, like if you're like, are you asking me, is the UFC model of matchmaking, is it more consumer friendly? It's designed to be more consumer friendly. It just so happens to be taking place without any kind of Ali Act, without any kind of union, without any kind of trade association, without any kind of a lot of things. So it's better for me and you, the consumer, but I'm not sure what else. It really all depends. But this is why the Ruiz thing is it's such a nice jolt to the system, right? It's so great when this guy comes in that no one's ever heard of, including, I can't pretend that last week I was telling you how great Andy Ruiz was going to do. The only thing I was saying was how there was no buzz for the fight, which, by the way, there wasn't, but now there's all the buzz in the world, so kind of funny how that works. It's so great that he came in and made the promoters pay for that. Really, really kind of great. I've interviewed Wilder and a number of times. I don't think Joshua bailed on an interview I was supposed to do, which is common, and Fury did as well. But every time you talk to Wilder, it's every question you ask them. When you fighting Wilder or Fury? When you fighting Joshua? What's it going to happen? Blah, 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 blah. And then, we're going to offer this guy $40 million to take it. And then one guy goes to DAZN and one guy stays at Showtime. And one signs with ESPN and one's with Al Heyman and one's with, and not, you're like, crying out loud, man. Like, seriously? How hard is this? How hard is this to get done? And then Andy Ruiz comes in, short notice. No one's ever heard of him, at least outside of the hardest core insiders. And outboxes the champ. By the way, did you see the new odds? They have, I think, God, where did I see those? I think I saw them maybe on Aaron Bronstedter's page, something like that, on his Twitter account. I can't remember. But they had Ruiz as an underdog, I think, plus 270 in the rematch, and then Joshua minus 350. Here's what I'd say. Wouldn't surprise me if Joshua wins the rematch. There are ways in which he can change his game plan up to deal with some of those challenges that he was facing this time. There's a lot more he can do. On the other hand, I would not be surprised if Ruiz wins again. Now, he got tagged hard a couple times, dropped in the second. Joshua's a big boy, and he lands, or in the third, excuse me. He lands thunder, man. He lands huge thunder. But if you can institute some, like, an immediate rematch is an interesting choice for Anthony Joshua. I guess he needs it promotionally, but I don't know how good that is for his chances. We're going to see.